What's the most compelling modern thing that you've seen?
Oh my God, Joe. I can't talk about it, but let me say this. One night, me and a bunch of the guys are playing strip poker, and all of a sudden I lose. So here I am, walking around base in high heels along the outskirts, and everyone.
Oh, that sounds crazy.
So here I am, walking around base in high heels along the outskirts.
I am not saying you're crazy, just the story.
No, you're good. And all of a sudden, this massive black craft floats above us, and I stop and stare at this craft. And next thing I know, I'm on the craft. And all these aliens are having their way with me. It was a horrible experience, and I have the scars to prove it.
So these beings did butt stuff.
Yes. Oh man, Joe. Among many other fucked up things. I still can't sit comfortably, but that's a story for another day. As for the ass play, I really can't get into it because I am under contract to keep quiet. I can lose my top secret clearance, and I need that to keep my grift game going. I'm sure you can respect that.
Absolutely. Still digesting the butt stuff. Christ, Lou, the pain. You're dealing with good God, brother. It's tough.
Well, thank you for being so open-minded, Joe. That's why I came on your show today. You just want to listen, and I really needed that today. Sometimes I sit in the dark and just cry.
So these beings did butt stuff.
Oh my God, I can't talk about it, unfortunately. This is my frustration, Joe, because I know what I've seen. I know what my colleagues have seen, right? And to this day, there's video that's coming in on a regular and routine basis that is very, very compelling.
My name is Lue Elizondo. For years now, I have claimed I ran a sensitive Pentagon UFO program. The truth is, I never ran a real Pentagon UFO program. I lied to the New York Times. I lied to TTSA investors. I lied to hundreds of show hosts and podcasters for profit for years. In my own paperwork with the Pentagon, I admitted that it was not a program but rather an activity. An activity that I pursued in my spare time while working at the Pentagon. In other words, while I was being paid to do real work for the Pentagon, I wasted taxpayer money and resources on my own personal hobby of being a UFO hunter. The program I claimed I was the director of never really existed. That's right. I declared myself the director of a program that had no funding and never officially existed. My own Pentagon personnel records confirm I had no assigned responsibilities around or involving UFOs. The truth is I was a Pentagon desk jockey. That was boring, so I created a whole fantasy world for myself where I was the director of a $22 million official program. I only ran a Pentagon-funded UFO program in the land of my own imagination. I'm the Pentagon UFO program manager from the land of make-believe.
Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. So the Lue Elizondo media blitz tour continues. Surprisingly, he's going with some less than well-known sort of shows and podcasts, I suppose in an effort to sell more books. But it's interesting that his book has already sort of tanked in sales. So this is interesting to me because he's on the biggest podcast in the world, Joe Rogan Experience, and it didn't appear to really help the book sales. And one of the things that I find interesting about his media tour is go look at the comments for like the Joe Rogan episode. He's getting destroyed in the comments. People are saying things like we've been saying here for years, things like, oh boy, another guy with stories and no proof. So it doesn't appear that his media blitz is really working out for him. I'm left with knowing the history of the grift game here and wondering, like, once you basically stand up and say the government has alien bodies and the government has alien spaceships, and I'm sure of it, but you provide exactly zero evidence to back up your less than credible claims, where do you go from there? I just don't understand. Like, where do you go after you're publicly saying the government has alien bodies, the government has spaceships? Now he's doubling down on the Arts Parts lie. For those unaware, Arts Parts was a bunch of trash, literally trash, sent to Art Bell. And Art Bell didn't think that it was real or genuine. And in fact, the story sent in with these so-called Roswell parts is kind of easily picked apart as less than credible. But Linda Moulton Howe, who worked for Art Bell at the time, picked up the story and grifted off of it for years, later selling those parts to the Stars Academy for a reported sum of $30,000. But these were the parts that were submitted somehow to the United States Army for research purposes through TTSA. And in the Arrow report, we get the stunning revelation that these are ordinary earthly metals, a part of a missile casing. This is not Roswell debris. And yet, Lue Elizondo is going on podcasts telling people, I held a piece of the Roswell crash debris in my hands. No, it wasn't Roswell crash debris. This guy's entire life, including his fake history of running a real Pentagon UFO program, has been a lie. And, I get it. I get that people want so desperately to believe that these conspiracies are true. But when there's overwhelming evidence that this guy has been a profit-driven scumbag for literally years, I'm left wondering, like, what value does this guy have except for giving everybody a disclosure boner with absolutely no evidence and then making a lot of money? And there was this controversial statement that he said, you've gotten all my efforts for free for the past 7 years. Dude is getting television show deals, book deals, and more, live speaking engagements and paid live speaking fees. By the way, he's going to be in Philadelphia, which is right near me, and I'm seriously considering getting tickets and going to it. But part of me thinks, I'm not going to be allowed to ask questions. He'll recognize me immediately, probably have me thrown out of the event. Because he is such an intellectual weakling and a coward. He can't withstand real questions from the media, especially a well-informed media member like me, who knows his history of taking money under completely and totally false premises, allegedly. As in the case of To the Stars Academy, where they collected something like several $1 million and didn't do anything that they were promising investors. Brad Berry says you got to go to Lou's Philly show. Wear a disguise. Well, did anybody ever see any of those super skin tight latex masks that make you like an old man or an old lady? I have several, so I could do that, and I'm seriously considering it. We'll see what what the future holds. It is on a Monday night, so maybe I could live stream right from the event, but I don't think they would allow that. I also happen to have hidden cameras, pinhole cameras, tiny cameras that I can pin to my jacket or my shirt or anywhere really, a backpack, and film the event, because I'm very interested in what is he telling people while he's taking money to be a speaker. Is he lying to people that he was the director of a Pentagon UFO program? Because he wasn't. And to me, if he's doing that, that would be considered, in my opinion, a form of consumer fraud. But that's just my opinion. I'm not a law enforcement officer or a lawyer. So I have a lot of little disconnected bits of this guy and some of his media appearances. We have some clips from Twitter, of course, which we'll be playing and discussing, but I didn't want to do this myself. Someone who you may be familiar with, he's been a guest here a few times, Steve Long, will be doing this with me tonight. And Steve Long correctly pointed out the number of for-profit companies that Lue Elizondo has created since 2017. So when people tell me, oh, it's not about the money, Stephen, it's about disclosure. Well, then do it for free. Why do you need 4 or 5 for-profit companies, right? And we've heard from sort of inside baseball whistleblowers who have worked very closely with Lue Elizondo that his entire focus is on getting money for UFOs. Otherwise, he wouldn't need a bunch of for-profit UFO companies if this was about disclosure rather than, profit. So joining me to talk about this is Steve Long. We'll bring him in here. We've had him sobering up in the back room here. Welcome,
Drying
Steve.
out over here.
Yeah, yes. It's good to see you. And I have to tell my audience the truth is that sometimes I bring you here just to make sure that I'm not going insane. Because I'm watching this, Steve Long, and I don't understand how a deception that is this sort of bold-faced and easily picked apart is working on especially like mainstream media. Like this guy's on Fox News. Like I'm an expert. He's been wrong about everything. I don't understand it. Do you? Like, why is this working? Nobody vets his claims before they put him on TV.
Yeah, I essentially, but that shouldn't surprise us. Is that really any different than a lot of what we see? We had a presidential election last night where both sides said, a lot of things that were less than forthright or honest, some more than others, and made extreme claims. I just think it's such a ubiquitous part of the media landscape and the news landscape, and just the way that we get information now, that I don't think that it doesn't even really click that it's really so unfounded, right? Like we're just used to people coming to us with authorities and credentials and just kind of telling us things without proving them to us. And it really is up to us whether or not to believe them, or if we are already partial to their message, we may believe them, or if we're not, we might not. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not encouraging. It's for sure. It's a shame. But I don't know that it's anything different. There's always been plenty of room for people to manipulate and deceive and to take advantage and to sow their own ideals and ideas.
Yeah, I mean, and did you? Pardon me. Did you see this clip where he's talking about he held the Roswell? I'm going to share that one. Let me put my fair use banner up. This is a transformative work. We're educating the public, and we'll be talking about and critiquing the video. So certainly this is covered under fair use. And you said we had a presidential election. I'm sure that you meant debate, right?
Or yeah, sorry.
You're getting ahead of yourself here. All right, one moment. I'm going to pull up this clip because I think this is important, especially because the Arrow report, unless he's talking about something other than the TTSA arts parts. And I love to see, this is just bizarre that he is on all of these right-wing shows, like Glenn Beck. Like, kind of bizarre to me, but okay.
What happened that day, and what is left?
This is about He's being asked about Roswell.
How much of this material were there bodies?
Yeah.
Tell me what happened that day.
So as the report goes, there was actually two incidents. There was 2 crashes, not one. And one was partially recovered, and there were biological specimens inside, allegedly 4, and they were very quickly whisked away, taken to the military base to lock them down. They didn't want the locals touching them or getting a hold of them. And of course, we know what happened after that, which was.
And this is all straight from Stanton Friedman's book and maybe Bill Moore's book. For those unaware, the original Roswell event was one crash. But in the 1980s, UFO researchers sort of added on that there was a second crash site, Corona, New Mexico, where the bodies were recovered. But this just kind of shows you how UFO mythology works, right, Steve? Like the original story said nothing about 2 crashes or 2 crash sites. And 40 years later, somebody suddenly discovers that there's another crash. But back to the video.
Was this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Campaign to say, oh no, these are Mylar balloons and stuff like that. No, these were crash test dummies that came down. Well, that's interesting because we weren't using dummies back then for some of these tests. We weren't using dummies until later. So these specimens were looked at. I don't know where they went after that, and where the material went after that. The trail gets kind of cold. Turns out later that there was another U.S. military installation, Wright-Patterson in Ohio, that also was involved in looking at material of crashed unknown vehicles of unknown origin. And
these are rumors. This is UFO speculation and UFO mythology. There's no verifiable proof that any alien technology ever ended up at Wright-Patterson, but there has been rumors about it in the UFO community for decades.
Yeah, it's there's even some very interesting documentation out there if you know where to find it. Again, that's completely unclassified. Anybody can look at it. There's a site called the Black Vault. The gentleman who runs that has a huge library of Freedom of Information Act releases that the U.S. government, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the Department of Defense, the DIA have all released over the years. And there's a treasure trove of these documents.
And that's where he's getting these documents from, the Black Vault. So what about his insider knowledge, Steve? Shouldn't he have access to better documents than publicly available unclassified documents on the Black Vault website?
Well, we would certainly hope so.
Come on, he's a government insider. He should have seen, the classified version of the documents, right? But he didn't. All he has is the same shit that you or I have access to, the stuff on the Black Vault. And,
right,
I don't want to make any accusations against John from the Black Vault, but maybe John is losing some of his objectivity here because suddenly he's like, oh, there's more to the ATIP OSAP story. And it's just a coincidence that Lue Elizondo keeps speaking very nicely about him and giving him a shout out on these big media appearances? I'm very suspicious of this. But I think this is what bothers me. Lue Elizondo danced around pretending to have all this insider knowledge about UFOs and aliens and being a government insider and running a government program for 10 years. And then when he's asked a question about something like Roswell, he's referencing this stuff on the internet, basically, that anybody can get. It's so stupid. All right, let's let him continue.
When you start reading these documents and realizing these are official government documents to the director of the FBI, from the director of the FBI to the director of the CIA, the National Security Council, these are real. These are legit. This is not Lue Elizondo telling you this. This is your government telling you this. And I think this is part of my
government always lies to us. So
sure. Touche, of course. But a lieutenant colonel that's there in the field writing a report, they're not lying to you. A politician, maybe. A senior person that's trying to cover their butt, yeah. But a low-level lieutenant colonel who's there, who's an MP, military police, is just writing the report. to his general, they're not lying to you. That's a real report written by a real individual about a real occurrence.
So have you been allowed to see anything? I mean, I assume there's been other crashes. Have you been able to actually see this evidence with your own eyes, the actual physical evidence?
Yeah, I actually gave a briefing to a senior member of the Department of Defense in 2017, several briefings, about the material that I personally have held in my hand.
And this has to be the Art's Parts material, right? So now he's briefing people about what is essentially a proven hoax that was sent into Art Bell. And he's briefing government officials. This is the problem that I have, Steve Long. It's like they're just wasting the government's time with like UFO stories that have no they claim there's evidence, then show us the lab reports. You remember the Atom Project with TTSA? They were going to do all these lab reports and analyses and give us the results. We never got the results from them. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because they know that stuff wasn't alien or otherworldly, right? And the Arrow report essentially confirmed that. Pieces of a missile casing.
Yeah, well, again, even TTSA, they had the CRADA with Army, and they could have told us the results years ago. In fact, John Greenwald, who Lou was just talking about, reached out to both the Army and to TTSA about results. TTSA had no response from what I remember, and the Army basically said it's TTSA's property. We can't release the results to you. It's up to them. It's their property, and we cannot release the test results. But they have been completed. They are done. Again, they're not telling us things because it doesn't support their narrative, right? That they don't have evidence to show us. They have a lot of things to say. Sorry, I know I probably don't seem like my heart's really in this one tonight, and this is probably more Lue Elizondo than I've watched in a couple of years, to be honest with you. I've seen some of the highlights.
Yeah, I've been checking out too. Like, people wanted me to cover the entire Theories of Everything interview. People wanted me to cover the entire Joe Rogan interview. That's 5 hours of my life. And I kind of am where you're at. Like, I'll look at the 4-minute clips, but I'm not wasting hours and hours of my life on this false UFO messiah, which is what anymore, I think he is. Right? Yeah, anymore. And also, you made a very good point. Like, they have the results, right? And you're saying that this is alien. So show us the proof. Show us the lab tests. Show us the lab results that show that this material is alien in origin. And I always say it time and time again, like, anybody that has access to a mass spectrometer could prove in an instant whether these are materials from Earth or not. Not in an instant, in 10 minutes. You can get, an elemental breakdown with isotopic ratios. And I've said it so many times, but for those unaware, if metal comes from another solar system, it will have a slightly different isotopic makeup, different isotopes of aluminum or bismuth or whatever these people are claiming. We would know instantly this comes from another solar system. And there's never been any proof of that.
I have held it in my hand, and so have other individuals but I'm not going to say who they were, that worked for very, very high-end aerospace companies.
TTSA,
best of the best.
Those
and
people.
They're looking at this from an engineering perspective, and they're scratching their head. They're saying, I can see it, I believe it, but I can't believe this material was found back then. And under those circumstances, this material, we did not have the engineering capability. It isn't an engineered piece of material. It's layered. It was studied by NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It's been studied by other organizations as well. And of course, that's really the gold standard, isn't it? When you have material that you can analyze and you can look at that material and succinctly say, yeah, this material is very special and it requires an X degree amount of technology to manufacture or reproduce. And frankly, it did not exist at the time the material was found, at least not with us, with humans.
strikes me that that statement, this material did not, we couldn't make this at the time. It strikes me exactly like when people say these UFOs defy the laws of physics. It's like a statement or it's a claim. Where's the facts and evidence to support the claim that you're making? I just don't see it.
Yeah, and I'll add how disappointing it is for me personally, as somebody who has been involved in the topic and interested in it for a long time. Had a UFO sighting as a child that got me involved. When the New York Times story came out in 2017 and Lue Elizondo came out, I thought that finally, information and answers were going to be forthcoming in the next, say, 5 years that I could show to non-believers, family, friends, stuff like that, who I had never even told about my UFO experience, because why would I, right? Because of the stigma. And here we are years later, and the only thing that we've gotten from Lue Elizondo is things that are already in the public sphere, lore that's already been passed around for years, decades in some cases, documents that other researchers have already released online that anyone can go and find. He's not offered anything of the inside. He's not offered any evidence, not even basic evidence for the most basic claims that he presented to us and that the New York Times presented to us back in 2017, that he was the head of a UFO program for the Pentagon, right? That was funded with $22 million. Not even basic proof to just prove those claims, which we ended up finding were not true, right? Were not wholly true. And Lue himself has even walked those claims back, saying that, he was not the director, he was not the head. Then he puts it on the cover of his book 2 years later.
I know, it's so bizarre. Yeah, I saw you did a post like original claim, director of ATIP, new claim, key member of ATIP. Like he can't even get his own story straight. Like, I was never a part of OSAP. In the book, I was part of OSAP. And then he says again on a podcast, I was never part of OSAP. My book made that very clear. And you're like, did you read your book, dude? Like,
I personally, I think he read it, right? Because he had to do the audio version book. But after spending 7 years listening to the meter and style of Lue Elizondo's speech, the way that he talks, the way that he writes on Twitter and official documents and endless YouTube interviews. I don't watch his interviews anymore because I've already heard it all. I've watched hundreds of them between 2019 and 2022. There's just nothing that's coming out. And furthermore, I highly question how much of the book he even wrote. Just because there's simple spelling mistakes and things like OSAP. He himself has contradicted, what he said in his book multiple times. Even when people are kind of setting him up for softball interviews, he can't even remember what he wrote in his book. They have to tell it to him. And none of the book is, in my opinion, written in Lue Elizondo's voice, the voice that we're all so familiar with. He has a very routine and steady style of speaking. And that was not in the book, not one bit. It sounded like it was written completely by someone else.
I agree with you. My first impression on reading the first 10 pages of the book was, this feels like a ghostwriter wrote this. It's not, you're right. I think I too became so familiar with the way he speaks and the words that he uses. And it seemed like this book was written by not him. I mean, I'll just say it. It's just the wording of it and the way that the sentences are crafted. Now, that, in fairness to him, that could be because maybe when he writes things to paper, he's a little more careful or a little different in his approach. Who knows? But I think
we have examples of his writing. We have numerous examples in tweets, in official documents. We have all kinds of examples of the way that he speaks, and it's very consistent, both in auditory and in text. It was not in the book. It was not him at all. It did not have any type of his voice to it. And again, I think everyone just takes for granted that he had a ghostwriter anyway. You know, everyone expects that. But I think that there's an extreme amount of this book that was just not written by him. I think, you know, just based on, you know, interviews with him or what he's already said, what's already out there, and it was kind of slapped together. You know, I don't know how long it really took, but it took a few
It
years.
didn't take
Clearly.
7 years though to write that book. I mean, I don't know. I just want to address this. I want to address this comment, Steve, because I get this all the time from people. And I think that history is our greatest teacher. Dr. Strangelove says the biggest news to be released about UAP in the last 5 years came from Jim Lukatsky while being interviewed on Jeremy Corbell's podcast. He confirmed that the United States government has possession of a craft. But Dr. Strangelove, people have been making those claims since at least the 1970s. So why are you so excited? And people have been making those claims that were high-ranking government officials, Philip Corso, Bob Dean, many people with good military or intelligence credentials have made these claims that the government has possession of a craft. But what we never get is any evidence to support the claim. They make these fantastic claims and then they sort of just, I don't know, melt into the ether of UFO culture to be believed. But where is the meat? There's nothing on the bone. It's just somebody saying things. And to me, if you think Jeremy Corbell or any information from him is credible, then you should look into his history of false claims. I mean, what do you think of all of the claims, Steve? All the people making these claims that the government has alien bodies, the government has alien spaceships. It would seem to me to be an extremely hard thing to keep secret. And the back engineering gets to me, because if you know anything about engineering, or especially back engineering, like imagine if you have an alien spacecraft, Steve, you're going to need like metallurgists, materials scientists, you're going to need propulsion experts, you're going to need electrical engineers if these things are electrical at all in nature. You're going to need computer scientists to try to figure out if they have some kind of quantum computer on board these craft, if they're tens or hundreds of thousands of years ahead of us. They're not going to have a regular computer like we have. You're going to need hundreds of people to look at this thing to try to figure it out. And
millions.
Yeah, and what we're saying is none of them ever got any. Yeah, none of them ever got any evidence. None of them ever blew the whistle, except for people that I think are bullshitters, just repeating stories. And so many of these stories coming directly from Hal Puthoff. He's the direct source mentioned in Lue's book over and over and over again. And he's the direct source mentioned over and over and over again by David Grush. So I don't know. I think there's no there. It's a lot of smoke and no fire to me so far.
Yeah, well, I certainly couldn't agree more that unsubstantiated claims, unevidenced claims are not confirmation, right? No matter who's saying it, no matter how much I may want to believe it or agree with it, it's not confirmation. It's not verification. It's not a verifiable source of information. It's just someone saying something. And that's just not enough. And yes, the reality is that if the program and the craft and the beings or whatever, if this has been going on since the 1940s and is being hidden by the government, and there's been crash retrieval teams and back engineering and blah, 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 there would literally now have to be at least hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have come into direct contact with these situations and have not been able to provide one single solitary verifiable piece of evidence for any single one of those claims. Because if they would have, we wouldn't be talking about this today. We wouldn't be arguing about it. We just have people's stories. We just have their claims. And we can't do much with that. Now, if someone's telling me that they're taking their garbage out tomorrow, or they took their garbage out last night, I'll probably believe them. But if they tell me that they have a fire-breathing dragon in their garage, they're going to have to show me something before I go ahead and say, yeah, that's probably a true statement, right? And it doesn't matter if the principal of the local school tells it to me or the president of the United States. I'm still not going to believe that there's a fire-breathing dragon that can fly in that garage until I see some verifiable proof of it. And that's just the bottom line. And people have the right to believe or not believe whatever they want. But when we're coming at this from what's supposed to be a conversation about the objective facts and scientific evidence, these are really hard lines that we have to hold. And in 7 years, at least just in the few 7 years since the New York Times story came out and Lue Elizondo, we have gotten nothing but stories. Meanwhile, these same individuals who have offered nothing for their claims, their sensational conspiracy, anti-government claims, have gone on to create multiple companies, sometimes multiple companies per year, to have multiple television shows, to do books. And again, we don't know if or how much Lue Elizondo has profited since 2017. Maybe he really hasn't made all that much money. But the bottom line is he has been trying to turn and generate profits since he has come on the scene, whether it was with TTSA and their for-profit schemes, which didn't really quite work out. We don't know if he walked away with any money. I imagine maybe he did. I don't know. But
well, I can't imagine that they're making him work. Yeah, I can't imagine they'd make him work on a television show for months on end and not pay him. You know, right. And that's why I've said, look, if you want to prove, if Lue Elizondo wants to prove that he's not a liar, then show us your tax returns since 2017, Mr. Transparency. You know, let's see them.
And there's something to be said for that. And again, that's a really high bar. So I try to maintain a little bit of understanding from the other side. And that's a really high bar. We don't even really require presidents to like publicly disclose their taxes. So I wouldn't even go so far as to ask Lue Elizondo of that, but to not even provide basic proof that you were part of a UFO program, to not even provide your DD-214s, to just show us what you did while you were in service to back up your claims. These are very, very standard things that happen at the bottom level of anything. You know, I may have changed some of my views about Edward Snowden over the past 10 years, but no one can deny that this man did not just come out and say the government is spying on millions of Americans without their knowledge. Believe me at my word. He showed us proof of it, undeniable, verifiable proof. That's what it takes when you are making claims of that level. And Lue Elizondo's claims are even more extreme, and we can't even get a basic understanding of what he really did in the military. Yet he continues to court all kinds of media and for-profit ventures. The guy started 5 for-profit organizations since, 2021? Like 4 of them just in the last 3 years. These are for-profit companies that have only one purpose, and that's to generate profits. Some of them have already closed. They closed within a year, but there's no doubt that he is attempting to generate profit, right? At the same time, he's not giving us any proof of the claims that are literally the only reason that he has any possibility to make profit or to be in the public eye, or even just to, if he really believes these things, to get his message out there. And now it's been 7 years and we've still not even verified the most basic claims. On the same hand, we know outright that some of the things that he has said to us were untrue or incorrect, that he has been unreliable in the things that he has told us. These are all really important factors to consider. Yeah. Again, we're not having a fun conversation here about what the possibilities of the universe are. I love that stuff. I'll get into that shit all night.
I like some of those
conversations
philosophical.
About, yeah, and sorry, I just want to say, because we're having a very real conversation. They're saying that the government is hiding something, that they're doing it illegally, that Congress needs to take action, that they need to fund millions, if not billions of dollars into certain programs, that they need to make and pass legislation, which they have done. All of these things are very large measures to take, most particularly when we don't have any evidence to verify what they're telling us, to make sure that we're making the right decision, that we're doing these things for the not just the reason that they say, but even that what they're saying is true, that we should be doing what they think we should be doing.
Well, let's think about this for a moment. these people who are making these fantastic claims, and like you point out, have not provided any evidence of their claims, they want to pass legislation that will cost the taxpayers more money so that we can investigate things more. But we've already—
and guess who happens to have companies already set up, ready to try and vie
Get government
for those
contracts.
government contracts. Those
Lue
very same
Elizondo,
people
yeah.
that wrote the legislation. Yeah, these are all very real world facts that can't be denied, right? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off there, but that was a very good point.
Yeah, and one of the things that's frustrating to me is if we just add it up, so OSAP wasted $22 million so that we could get stories about dino beavers and werewolves. $22 million. How much money do you think Arrow spent on all of their investigations so far? I would have to think that that's several million dollars. So we're already approaching at least probably $25 million wasted. Lue Elizondo admits in his book that he misappropriated funds intended for other things to his UFO hunting fund. You know, at some point you have to say, you know, how much money are we going to waste on your personal beliefs that are all faith-based? And I always joke about this, but it's true. Like, imagine if a group of activists that believed in unicorns got together and then they demanded that the United States government spend $25 million to prove that unicorns are real. Like, that would be laughed out of the Congress. It would be considered a joke, you know? But here we are, I guess, because this is somewhat can be tied to national security because they do this UFO threat. It's a threat, even, you know, it's a threat even to airplane safety, like Ryan Graves's organization, Americans for Safe Aerospace. So they create a threat, and then they want the government to spend money to deal with the threat, and then they have their catcher's mitt waiting for these contracts to come in with the government money. It's crazy to me. And you know, I would encourage everybody, contact your congressperson or your senator and bend their ear. Let them know about the dino beavers and the werewolves and the poltergeists, that these same group of people wasted all this money. And that's another thing that gets me. It's the same group of people. It's all the same group of people, Steve.
And call the DOD, you know, the IG office, and report waste and abuse that you think is going on. You know, let's not twist it here. If what they're saying is not true, there has been massive waste and abuse that has been going on, not just the past few years, but for decades, with some of the same players over and over again. And we can talk about how negligent the millions of dollars are, how, you know, $22 million is nothing in the scheme of a government budget. It's nothing, fraction of 1%. I hear that, but it's still a lot of money, and we shouldn't be okay.
Spend that money on veterans? I'd rather spend that money on veterans. There's homeless veterans all over the country right now. How about we build some housing for those homeless veterans with that $22 million? Why don't we build a $22 million veteran housing complex that if any veteran ever finds themselves homeless, they could get a free plane ticket or bus ticket and get picked up at the airport or the bus station and taken directly to safe, clean housing for free. You know, I'd rather put the money into something like that or help anybody else. This is just so stupid. We're wasting all this money on these wackadoos. They're wackadoos. And you mentioned Lue Elizondo's DD-214. There may be some interesting news on that front. Osiris UAP, Jeremy McGowan says, do you want to know something neat? There are several case law precedents where the courts have ruled that the military records of public figures can be released under FOIA when the public interest is substantial. And then he gives some precedents. And then he says, now, given the fact that Lue Elizondo has been rather tight-lipped in showing his DD-214, his military records, assignments, and such, and given the fact that he is absolutely a public figure as a published author, TV host, actor, producer, and one who has appeared in mainstream media outlets such as CNN, Fox News, The Washington Post, Politico, Joe Rogan, guess who's just filed a FOIA citing legal precedent and justification for Lue Elizondo's military records? Steve Long, I think if he gets these records, we're going to find out that Lue Elizondo lied about a lot more than running a UFO program. What do you think?
Well, I think so too. I think that that his military record would probably be devastating to his claims and his claim narrative. But he would talk his way around it. He would say, well, these were unofficial activities, which he's now walked back an official funded program that he was the director of, he was the head of. He's now walked that back to an unfunded, unofficial hobby program that he was not the head of. Let's just be clear here. And he walked those back after researchers proved those claims to be untrue with verifiable documentation. It took multiple years for people like John Greenwald and Stephen Greenstreet and others to show verifiably that those were not true statements, and for the government to declare that, and for us to see it on paper.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? I love that you pointed that out, Steve. Like, I didn't quite get that point. Like, I knew that he was a fraud and he didn't run these programs, but you threaded that needle better than I did. Because when you say the reason we know he lied about running this $22 million funded Pentagon program is because of skeptical journalists and researchers who proved it. So what that really means is if the skeptical journalists and researchers who proved that didn't prove him a liar, I think he'd still be lying about that, don't you?
100%, because he continued to push the lie until it was shown that he couldn't push it any further. And there's just an irony here that's not lost on me, that there's a swell of support for this idea that there's, a deep state of actors, government employees, ex-government employees, and powerful people behind the scenes who are manipulating the wheels of government and bureaucracy to hide things or for their own nefarious purposes, including hiding the truth of aliens to us, right? This is the message. Meanwhile, we literally have proof that these people pushing this message are doing that exact same thing themselves. They are a group of people working behind the scenes to derail and influence and lobby our bureaucracy and our legislative process to bend it towards their will, to what they want and what they think should be done. And it's just so ironic to me that's not really recognized too often. Let's not twist it that these people they have been lobbying Congress behind the scenes for years. They've been working with the media, with people who are soft to their message, who believe what they are saying. They have infiltrated, by their own admission, and gone to other governments throughout the world to try and further this thing. I mean, this if that's not a deep state, I don't know what else is. Just because they're doing it in front of you doesn't mean that it's not deep.
And one of the things that always bothers me, Steve, is that some of these fans of these people that are running what I just call this op, they are like, these people are going to get us the truth. Like, since when do you get to the truth by lying over and over and over again, or fudging the facts, or, the lie by omission? It's just so stupid that we're supposed to be in some sort of truther community. And, I get that I'm on the one really, really skeptical side of the spectrum here, but I've gotten that way progressively over time. I didn't just show up like this. It just drives me crazy that we're supposed to be in this truther community and we're going to get the truth about the aliens from the government. And how are we going to get there? We're going to get there with people that constantly get caught lying to us. It's so stupid. It's childish and dumb, and I feel like, man, did I waste like a lot of my youth, like reading books and documentaries and shit. And then eventually you wake up and you go, oh, we are being lied to. And there is a UFO cover-up. But the real cover-up is that all of these people are lying scumbags that are using fake evidence, like fake pictures of aliens or fake videos, or they're just lying to us about what evidence they claim to have. Like, You're right. Since 2017, this guy's been doing this dance. Like, he's got all this insider information. All he got us were those 3 videos, 2 of which are debunked out the wazoo. They're just not anything spectacular, alien, or extraordinary. And the other one is likely not either. And even on the release form, Lue Elizondo, it says they're UAV, UAS balloons or drones. So even on the release form, it says they're not alien or anything extraordinary. But that's what evidence he put forth, that the government is hiding aliens.
And again, we wouldn't know that. We wouldn't have seen the release paperwork that Lue Elizondo filed for those videos were it not for intrepid researchers like John Greenwald. Lue didn't present that paperwork. He denied that he even had anything to do with the films leaking out to begin with.
Yeah. He just filled out the release forms, and then they magically ended up in the parking lot to Christopher Mellon, who then both Lue Elizondo and him go running to this new fledgling organization that's going to get UFO disclosure called TTSA. And that's another issue. Like, I don't know why nobody's ever criminally prosecuted in UFO land for any kind of form of fraud. Like, I just, look, I have very limited experience with government, but here's what I know. If you or I basically improperly took government property and then got a TV show deal, a book deal, generated millions of dollars with that government property, we'd have some kind of consequences. It just seems like that's why people think it's a government disinformation op, because everybody gets a pass. They just get a pass for doing all this shady shit. And, like if I started a company tomorrow and I lied about my resume to all of the company investors, I clearly lied about my resume, I would face FCC crucifixion or SEC I'd be crucified by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Nothing happens. And now we have a man who's marketing a book, and on the front cover of the book, it says he's the head of the program. But in the book, he admits he wasn't the head of the program and it wasn't really a program. Like, how is this okay from a consumer perspective?
Yeah. And I think it just goes to show just how many legal ways there are to lie and to rip people off. A friend of the show, your show, Manny, Area 503, did a great look into TTSA and their techno scam a couple years ago. And I think that he kind of, at least at the time, and I tend to agree with what, he presented and with what I had found, that there was an investigation into TTSA, but ultimately, the type of 501 that they, the type of for-profit, let's be clear, for-profit charity that they were, there's a very low level to meet to essentially fit the bill of doing the public some good. That's there's a very low bar.
It's supposed to be a public benefit company.
Right. And essentially, if you look at the fine print of those types of 501s, it really is egregious that it was even legalized. But essentially, it really gives them the opportunity to really take funds, promise almost anything that they want, and as long as they meet a very small standard, which could be met with essentially just producing some movies or putting out some pamphlets of information about UFOs. Doesn't even matter if the information's true. That would meet the public goods, bar that must be set for that. And essentially, although I did at first look at it and say, well, Lue leaked these videos, he was never prosecuted. TTSA promised crazy things like a spaceship and never produced it, took people's money, and they were never prosecuted. Like, this looks like a government op. But really, when I look at it, a second and third time, I tend to just see that, there's just a lot of gray areas that people exploit in the law, in media, in the way that people process information and believe things or are partial to things. And that's what I see a little more often. Lue Elizondo exploited a gray area to get out some videos which meant nothing to anybody in the military. They didn't care about them. They were happy to let him take them to form some type of, what he told the government he was going to do was use them to create a database to help, whatever, identify unknowns or whatever.
Yeah,
Some
they
type
were
of,
not meant for
database.
public. They were not meant for
Right.
public consumption or release. So
Right.
somebody
But,
bent the rules. Yeah.
Yes, and again, if you look there, although the images were released to Lue Elizondo, they weren't supposed to be released to the public media. But again, it says two different things on that piece of paper, so that's kind of a gray area that he can exploit. Further, we're talking about issues of national security and technology, and I think while the government certainly is involved in this more than a government op involving Lue Elizondo from the ground floor. Now I happen to have more of the opinion that the only government involvement is reaction. Lue Elizondo did what he did, and he came out with those things. And I think that they did not expect it. They didn't know that he was going to do it. I don't think that it was a government plan. Maybe it was. Maybe we'll find out information later on that shows that. But I think that everything that came after was a reaction. And they're not going to give up any information that they don't absolutely have to. And that's not because they're the big, bad, evil government, although sometimes they certainly are. But it's because their sole job is to protect national security, to keep secrets. And even information that has been released in the past that we thought was completely harmless and incidental turned out to be very valuable to adversaries. So even with your best intentions, when you think that something should be released to the public and has no value at all, it can harm you. And for that reason alone, it's long been standing the practice of the government and of the intelligence community to not divulge any information, to not show your hands, to keep your adversaries guessing. And there's no daylight between telling the American public something and telling American adversaries something. There's no difference there. What the American public can know,
what's public is public.
Yeah. Can know. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no expectation. There should be no expectation on us taxpayers. That we should have no expectation that the intelligence community is going to tell us all our secrets. Again, there's been many times over the past 80 years that the government and Congress has come together to address the UFO issue because enough people made enough noise and got senators to speak up about it and the media to speak up about it. And we have waves every 20 or 30 years and they look into it again and they look at specific cases. In the 90s, it was stuff like Roswell, right? And now it's other things. And they look at specific cases when they can and they try and give out information related to them. And every time that they've done so, whether it was for Roswell or with Arrow today, every single time they release some information to try and make people happy. They tell them outright, we have
the least they can
evidence.
The least
right.
they can. Yeah.
But they tell us outright, there is no evidence that the government has hid any type of non-human technology, aliens, craft, none of that. We've found nothing. We've listened to all the people. We've looked at the evidence that they said that they've had. We've not found it. Some of them just had stories. Some of them thought that it was a program related to ET that wasn't. It was related to other worldly tech and things that they just didn't have a need to know about. And we should have no expectation for them to divulge that information. And furthermore, even if they did, even if the government literally came out with every secret that they had and told us everything and showed us every secret technology, there would still be plenty of people who said they're still hiding it. They're still hiding the aliens. They're not telling us the truth. And at that point, there's nothing the government can do to convince those people who are willing to believe that without any verifiable evidence to begin with. So it's a zero-sum win. It's just not there's no way that the government can win that game. But they certainly can try to win the game of the information war and keeping the nation safe. And certainly the way that they're going to respond to people like Luis Elizondo and the things that he's saying are going to be looked at more with respect to how do we keep the nation safe? How do we keep information safe? Then, how do we convince these people that Lue Elizondo is lying or mistaken or just wrong? That's not their concern, and we should understand that. And furthermore, I would think the burden on the claimant of Elizondo.
I agree with you.
Allow him to place the burden on other people like the government.
I agree with you to some extent, but to the other extent, the other side of the coin is at some point, I think the government has a responsibility to do a very thorough job in countering these people's false claims. In other words, like, do you really think that anybody in the government knows all of Hal Puthoff's history and how many claims that he has made? And, you know, at some point, I think the government needs to do a better job. They need to go, okay, Lue Elizondo is getting his information from Hal Puthoff. Let's examine Hal Puthoff's history. And if we do, we find out that he's been involved in all kinds of scammy things. You know, Stanford Research Institute had nothing to do with Stanford, but they wanted government contracts and it sounded good. They wasted millions of dollars studying psychics. They declared several psychics having real and genuine psychic powers. They were fooled by magic tricks. This man has run free energy investment things that never worked out for any of the investors. You know, at some point, I think the government does have to step up and do a better job at pushing back. And I've heard from several sources, and I heard before that Arrow report came out from these sources, and they were accurate with what the Arrow report was going to be. So, you know, I think they're good sources who are basically saying the government is getting sick of some of these people because it's wasted time, it's wasted resources, and they're going to start pushing back more, I think. And I think they should.
I don't disagree. And you know, in spirit, I don't disagree with you, Stephen. The government needs public trust, right? It needs it as a fundamental element to operate. However, the government is not the arbiter of free speech. It has no purview nor power to limit the free speech of individuals, and that includes former government employees. And, you know, yes, I think that you're right. I think that there's plenty of people in the government who now, after 7 years, have realized what's going on. They've taken the time to look into the history of these people and into the topic, and they've realized the missteps that have taken place, and they would like to right that. But the government itself, as an official vehicle, has no mandate, no power to be able to step in and arbitrate those things. However, individuals in the government can, specifically when they leave the government. People like Sean Kirkpatrick have been very
there's rumors, Steve Long,
forceful to come out and speak out against these
There's
people,
a lot of rumors that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick has been a little quiet lately for a reason, and that reason is allegedly, and I'll take this with a grain of salt because it's from a single source, but a good one. Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick is now under contract with someone who will be telling sort of the skeptical part of this whole story since 2017. And apparently what he's going to have to say is going to make the Arrow report look very polite and timid in comparison. And I hope it happens. I hope he comes out and names names and says these are the 40 whistleblowers that Grush claimed that he interviewed, and we interviewed 36 of them, and here's what they had to say. You know, we should know this stuff. Otherwise, you're just letting grifters grift, you know? And it's kind of a sad situation, you know?
And I agree. And individuals do have the right and the power, the legal power, even sometimes, to go ahead and get involved with things like that. And they do have a First Amendment right of free speech, and they can speak out on things that they don't agree with, even if they don't have evidence. That's fine. The government itself does not. And while I do sympathize with the need to have a public trust and for the government to certainly court and protect that, I'm not ready to allow the government to be the arbiter of free speech or decide who can or cannot tell the truth. Even if I don't believe that those people should be saying what they're saying, I will certainly fight for their right to be able to say.
I'm a free speech guy too,
time,
but when they're endangering people's family though with their conspiracy theories, that I think they have a responsibility to push back hard on that stuff. But I am sort of a free speech absolutist. And did you know it was a long-standing government policy to never comment on the free speech of a private citizen. So unless that person was a military at the time they said it, you know, officer or something, They just wouldn't comment. They let the contactees for decades sell their stories, and they never commented on it, really.
Correct.
You know?
I mean, again, we do have official government. We do have official government comments, right? That there are no hidden aliens, that there are no crashed UFOs being back engineered that are involve non-human technology. These are very definitive statements. People just don't want to believe them, and that's fine. They don't have to. But the
problem is the government gets caught lying so much that you can't trust them. So I sort of have a policy of taking the individual who made the statement and look at their history. And when it comes to Kirkpatrick, you know, he's got a very prestigious career. I don't see that him having a history of being a government lying mouthpiece. And he seems very sincere in what he found. So, you know, I kind of, in that case, I believe him. But I guess the problem is it's like a self-feeding loop, you know, like, the government is lying because they're part of the cover-up. You know, it just becomes part of the story then when the government refutes these things. So they are in a catch-22 situation.
Right. And the government there's times when the government is not forthright or honest. I totally agree with that. But when we're talking about such a massive conspiracy for over 80 years, multiple generations, this always the same claims, the government says the same thing over again. Like, what am I going to be like? Well, yeah, it's really going on. All these millions of people have been involved in the cover-up but have not been able to show proof. Like, I just can't go and take that leap. But I just want to, you know, the First Amendment is very, very important, right? Because it protects our rights to speech, but it also it gives you the responsibility to vet the speech that you hear, to vet the things that people tell you. That is your responsibility as a free citizen in a free country. It's not up to the government to tell you what you're supposed to believe and what you're not supposed to believe, and who's supposed to talk and who's not supposed to talk. Even people who are saying things that could be harmful to people, right? And there's different lines that we draw there. But I'm certainly not willing to endow the government with massive powers just to challenge Lue Elizondo. You know, that's a very slippery slope that we start to get into. But I am certainly willing to champion the fact that myself, as a citizen, has the responsibility to vet the free speech that everyone has their right to, because that means they have the right to say any fucking thing that they want to, for the most part.
I agree with that. You know what? I'm sort of a free speech absolutist, and you know, when they you know, like certainly people, there's a big argument about hate speech online. Like, oh, that person is basically a Nazi and they're saying anti-Semitic things. I'm kind of like, why don't we let them so we can identify them, you know, instead of pushing them into the dark corners of the internet where you don't know who's saying these things and inciting violence, you know? So, yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, I'm okay with people saying whatever they're going to say, even if it's ignorant or I disagree with it. Because
and the speech bans that we see here on
different platforms. Let's just say different platforms. Yeah, I think there is a delay. Yeah, I apologize. It's fine.
But you know, just like you can't say certain words on platforms, and I know that the intention behind them is very good. But if we can't call something by its proper name, then how can we have a real conversation about it? How can we combat false information about it if we can't even talk about it? You know what I mean?
Well, you know, a perfect example of this, Steve, is the 17th letter of the alphabet, Q-tard conspiracy. There was a time when you couldn't use that letter. And if you did, you were risking your YouTube channel. And here's where it gets dangerous, Steve. I personally know of people who were making videos critical of the Q-tard posts. They were basically being very skeptical, saying this is all hopium garbage and ripping them apart. They got their YouTube channels demonetized because the algorithm couldn't tell the difference between somebody pushing the Q-tard conspiracy or simply being critical and talking about it. And that's certainly a danger. And now we have, people threatening that, oh, we can't let people have free speech on these different social media platforms. It's too dangerous. It's dangerous to who? I don't know.
Yeah, and these are things that give me pause. As much as I would like to see false claims and false information countered immediately, swiftly, and widely, we have to understand the lines that we're drawing, and the way that we're going to change things. And I think the platforms are a great example, right? When they just start having their algorithms look for certain words, and you automatically start shutting down conversations based just on that word. Well, you don't know if someone's using that word in a way that's true or in a way that's false, in a way that the information is true or the way that the information is false. So although the intention behind that was good, right, to limit this false information that's spreading like wildfire, by limiting the speech, they actually helped fuel the fire in a lot of ways, because you couldn't talk about it successfully. You couldn't combat the information successfully. And these are just things, again, even with the best intentions, those are the types of things that happen, and we certainly must learn from them, right, so that we don't repeat them. But yeah, I can understand, and I do understand the disgust that people can have with people who sow wild claims and conspiracies without evidence, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly there are some people that have had to pay huge consequences. Look at Alex Jones, that's no joke. What does he owe? Billions of dollars to Sandy Hook families, and well, he should. And, I got to say, I never listened to Alex Jones for serious news or information, but I find him entertaining. But even that was too much for me, because I'm a father. And if somebody had murdered one of my children and this joker was on the internet saying it never happened, I would have went and choked him out, It's just sometimes things are too egregious and they have to be corrected. But I didn't agree with canceling him off of the entire internet for that. It's interesting that he's back now. He's sort of on a rehabilitation tour, but he's just as crazy as ever.
Fifth one or something.
Yes, I want to shift the conversation to Wackadoos working for the United States government. I don't know if you know this, Steve Long, but we've got an epidemic of complete and total wackadoos who work for the United States government. And recently, a few of them were in a rock band. We'll lighten things up here. This is funny. Stephen Greenstreet posted this. Travis Taylor and Jay Stratton, both who worked for the Pentagon in UFO related jobs, performing. Oh, this is Highway to Hell. No, I can't play that. Wait, there's another one. All right, let me find it. There's another one where they perform an original song. I'm just going to play that. But how crazy is it that they're? Oh wait, I got it. How crazy is it that these are members of the United States government, or were, and they're at a conference, and Hitchhiker exclusive, freckles on her butt. There's nothing but quality entertainment. These are the people in the government studying UFOs. Two of them, anyway. The guitar player and the singer. Oh, this is terrible. All right, you know what? I think I heard enough. I don't know about you.
Thank you. This was going to be my last time on this show. I'm not going to lie. I was close.
But the fact that these wackadoos worked for the government studying UFOs, and by the way, I think that these two individuals were largely responsible for not doing anything. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. For not doing anything about Chinese spy balloons because they were too busy looking for aliens. And that means that the government employing wackadoos like this guy, Travis Taylor, the Skinwalker Ranch guy, and Jay Stratton, who isn't Jay Stratton the one who believes that a werewolf followed him home from Skinwalker Ranch? I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got a guy who believes that werewolves followed him home from Skinwalker Ranch, and Travis Taylor, who, he believes in all kinds of stuff, and he can't tell the difference between a fly flying by a camera and an alien spaceship doing 30,000 miles an hour. And these are the two of the people that the government is paying to investigate UFOs for the United States government. These are wackadoos.
Yes, I agree. The funny thing is how often this pattern has repeated over the decades, over the last 80 years. We talked not so long ago, just a half hour ago, about past UFO investigations and how they come into fruition. And typically it's from people who are believers within the government, who kind of get together and start sharing ideas and having beliefs, and they slowly branch that out and influence other people that this stuff is real, that it needs to be addressed, blah, blah, blah. There's stories, there's witnesses, and, it gets to the point where they have, media influence and they have senators on their side, and then eventually congressmen get things going. And these individuals, during COVID, if you notice, if you look at Lue Elizondo's interviews, for instance, it's surprising how few interviews he did between 2017 and 2020. There was like maybe less than 20 of them in those 3 years, I think. But then if you look at 2020 to 2022, he did like hundreds, literally. So COVID was a huge boon for this narrative. And that's when it got the swell of support inside of Congress, and that's when they started getting moves made on the UAPTF and that whole build up during the summer of 2021, really, to start getting this legislation pushed. And the UAPTF that these gentlemen were, eventually a part of, which was apparently, it looks like their last, at least people like Jay Stratton, really their last positions maybe in the government or programs. But the UAPTF was these collection of clear believers, right? And by their own admission, they were only able to solve one out of 144 cases of UFO events, right? And I just want to point that out because Arrow has had a much higher success rate, solving many, many multiples of cases, and even showing us information about some specific cases, saying, look, this is what it was. People can reject that. That's fine. That's their right. But it's just so funny how worthless and how detrimental and just wasteful the UAPTF was, not just in missing, Chinese spy balloons that were going over the nation, but also in inspiring everything that's come since from 2021, all the legislation that's passed. Even Arrow itself is a direct result of these gentlemen spinning this narrative that there are unknowns that are a threat to this nation. And although they won't say it out loud, they do sometimes, that these are not human. These are not human things. This is not America. This is not America's adversaries. These are non-human threats. And it's just amazing how wasteful the UAPTF was, but how hailed it is still. And all the people.
Yeah, and people keep quoting it. Yeah, and listen, I think you're being a little too polite, so I'll say it for you. The UAPTF was filled with complete and total wackadoos. And here's a perfect example, Travis Taylor. This is who's in charge of stuff at the UAPTF.
I'm Dr. Travis Taylor. I'm a subject matter expert in space defense, asymmetric warfare, rocket science, and alien invasions. I've really studied this phenomenon my whole life, and I've made a pretty good detailed investigation into what might happen where we have first contact with extraterrestrials. Now, this message is a welcome and a warning for any UFOs or aliens out there that might receive this signal and decide to act upon it. First, the signal was sent against my advisement. Second, if you do show up, you got to keep this in mind. Humanity is mostly a peace-loving, fun-loving species, but we have a very good propensity to make warfare, and if anybody shows up and tries to impose things on us, cultural or alien concepts that are something against what we're all about, we will make darn sure to activate our warfare-making machine. So keep that in mind and come visit us. We'll have a good time. We'll learn from each other. We'll see y'all soon.
This guy was in charge of a national security problem. This guy. But it gets better, Steve, because I don't know if you've seen this. There's another member of the UAPTF, and Stephen Greenstreet. He's the only mainstream reporter that's getting this story right. So, former Pentagon UFO Task Force analyst Sarah Gam discusses using her psychic powers to remote view aliens and talk to ghosts. More on Gam and her ties to the intelligence community and tweet below. But listen to this woman who's she was a UAPTF analyst, claimed psychic and ghost hunter, current Pentagon contractor.
Sarah, I believe you said you became psychic.
I went to classes and trained to harness my abilities and to know how to use them.
So is that how the remote ghost hunt comes into play? What did you remote view?
I'm able to see entities that are in a facility. I'm able to see ghosts. I actually saw an alien that was at the location today and yesterday.
This location being?
In Tombstone, Arizona.
So the question is, did you contact some spirits?
Yes, definitely did. I have conscious interactions with them, or they're aware of their surroundings.
Through this specific ghost hunt?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a person in the audience that asked questions to the ghosts themselves, and I was able to channel a response to the person in the audience.
Wow. This is a person that is in charge of is an analyst for a national security issue, UFOs or UAPs, for the United States government, and is currently still employed by the Pentagon as a contractor. Am I the only person that thinks this is a problem? This is a wackadoo. And by the way, I got a lot of hate mail for calling her a scumbag. I did call this woman a scumbag. Sarah Gam is a scumbag because on her website, you can pay her $150 and she'll talk to your dead relatives for you. That is a scumbag. I'm sorry, but if you're pretending to talk to people's dead relatives for $150 in their time of grief and sadness, then you're a scumbag. And this is crazy. And now this person is going very public. She'll be making all the rounds now, talking about aliens that she sees with her superpowers in a facility.
Yeah, I'm sure, a lot of these people are going to keep coming out of the woodwork as time goes on. It's frustrating to see, and it's definitely frustrating how far this issue has gotten with these people and how far they've pushed this unevidenced ball of wax. But the reality is
unevidenced ball of wax. I'm stealing that from you. I'm stealing that. It's an unevidenced ball of wax.
It's a big old ball of bullshit. But the bottom line is, we can't you can't persecute people for their beliefs. Federal employees have the right to believe whatever the fuck they want to, whether it's God, pixies, or aliens, or Bigfoot. They can believe what they want. When
there's Chinese spy balloons being flown over the United States, and these nutters think it's aliens, that's a problem.
And that's a different story. And you certainly have seen some pushback. And of course, the UAPTF was disbanded and was superseded by the AOIMSG, and then superseded again by Arrow. And we've gotten better, right? And Arrow came out from the get-go and said, look, we are holding to a scientific standard of evidence. We need verifiable information. We are not going to accept claims. No, trust me, bros. This is a scientific program. So, there was some fine-tuning. again, very unfortunate how far these individuals got.
Here's how they fine-tuned it. They fired all the wackadoos and hired real scientists, which
Right,
is, I
but
guess,
they
you're
did
right, it's
that-
progress.
Right. But they did that for good reason, right? Because they were not, and we're just speculating here, but they missed the Chinese balloons, or they were, just totally speculating and not working within the bounds of scientifically verifiable information. But you can't just fire somebody from the government because they believe something crazy or because they believe in God or Allah or whatever, and that's just a fact. And we don't have to like it. But these are just the things that we have to deal with and live in. And it's just something to understand, that, there are plenty of people in government in high-ranking positions that have jobs of authority and importance that believe really crazy shit. And that's why it's just important to not take anybody's word for it. Doesn't matter who they are. If they're saying something,
well, I understand that argument because, after all, somebody once got me really good and said, "Well, didn't you say you were a Christian?" And yeah, I was raised Christian, and like we believe that a guy rose from the dead. That's a wacky belief. That's a crazy belief. That's faith based. So, yeah, I understand the argument that you can't discriminate against people based on their beliefs, but when it directly affects what they're supposed to be doing for their job with the government, and sure, I'm sure there's Scientologists in the government, and that's a crazy, wacky belief system. And I'm sure did you know, like, the FBI is filled with Mormons, but the FBI likes Mormons because they don't drink, they don't smoke, they're very moral, ethical people. So there's a kind of a reason that there's so many Mormons in the FBI. It makes kind of sense. They don't drink, they don't smoke, okay. But yeah, I guess I see the argument. But when it directly affects national security, no, no, fire these wackadoos. And what do you think have you seen the new head of Aero, whose name escapes me at the moment? I can look it up, or if somebody knows it in the live chat, let me know. He's buddies with Jay Stratton. That may be a problem.
Yeah. And again, I don't know. We just have what Stephen Greenstreet put out there, basically comments from Sean Kirkpatrick and comments from Jay Stratton. And Jay Stratton said that he, knows him well and that they're good friends. And Sean Kirkpatrick said that he has never heard of him and has never worked with him, which is very concerning for a guy that's, taking his spot. You would think that they would have at least kind of been in the same orbit or had some kind of something. So I don't want to read too much into it, but those are not encouraging comments. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm worried because we know that some of these UFO related programs in the government have been run by wackadoos, and we don't know if this new guy is going to take the same approach that Kirkpatrick did, which was science and evidence based,
Right.
But isn't it interesting? I know these guys are going to rip that guy to shreds the minute he doesn't find the aliens. Don't you think so? Like, everybody's a new head of Aero. Maybe he'll be fairer. And yeah, he knows Jay Stratton, so he's probably cool with the aliens. As soon as he doesn't find evidence of aliens and crash retrievals and bodies, they're going to turn on him and call him a traitor, and he should be drugged behind a Humvee and all that. They're going to turn on him in a minute, the minute he doesn't agree with them.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you making sure that I'm not insane, because sometimes I'm looking at this stuff going, I just don't get some of this stuff. It's just bizarro world to me, and I'm sure that the carrots will continue. Disclosure's coming any day now, Steve Long. So there's that, there's new whistleblowers coming forward.
Yeah.
And new documentaries. So
I try and have there's always plenty of new content, right? And that's what all this is. It's just content. But I do try and have a little bit of understanding from some of these people. I think that as much as most of them are exploiting the topic and their involvement in it for personal gain, I think for some of them, there's at least a level of belief in what they're doing. They do believe in such things and think that there is a cover up. I won't go into like specific people, but like I can imagine, as somebody who had a UFO experience and believed in the UFO narratives subsequently, and again, like because of being like a child of the 80s and 90s, like I had heard about UFOs long before I ever had my own experience. So when I finally did, I just assumed that was, like aliens or whatever, or some reverse engineered craft. And so from that point, imagine if I had gone into, a government job after college, or had been a government scientist, right? And come across some people that also maybe had experiences, or people like Hal Puthoff, who start telling me about like secret government knowledge and stuff. Like I would suck it right up. I would have believed it, right? Because I still hadn't, and not for nothing, like I believed that stuff for 20 years. If somebody was saying something, why would this guy be saying? Why would this government employee, this military guy, why would he be saying it if it wasn't true? Like he's not wrong. He's not going to be lying to me. Like he's an authority, right? And so it's very easy, I think, to see how these people can be wrapped up into this stuff. And I know I come off as very crusty skeptic a lot of times, but I do have a lot of understanding for where these people are coming from. But there is a lot of concern when you see stuff like this going on in the government for such a long time. And it's very concerning how far that they got. And I don't know about the new director of Arrow. I would say it would be a curveball for everybody if this guy turned out to be a believer who was willing to sacrifice the scientific standards for that of belief and speculation. Maybe he will, and we'll all be surprised by that, and it'll give everybody a lot of fodder. Personally, I don't know that I care either way. I do wish Osiris a lot of luck in trying to level for Lue Elizondo's DD-214s. I did take a look as we were talking about the post that he put up. I don't know how successful he will be. I fear that he won't be. It's pretty much standard that the only person who can access a DD-214 is the military person, and in the event of their death, their next immediate family.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but I think he might have a good argument because he's making claims. He's making claims directly related to his military service, up to and including, General Mattis jumping out of an armored personnel carrier with a machine gun in some theater of war he claims to have been in. And if he's saying that stuff and it's complete bullshit, the public has the right to know that that's complete bullshit.
Yeah, and I wish him a lot of luck. Although we should point out that there's been many people who have done the same thing to much even greater acclaim. We know of all kinds of men that have come out claiming to be SEALs and claiming to have killed Osama bin Laden and stuff. And even in those instances, they become very, very public figures, and they kind of piss the government off. But we still don't really see that they're willing to sacrifice that level of privacy for them. Again, I do wish Jeremy a lot of luck. It's funny because if you think about Rick Doty and how we ended up with his service records, somebody tried to file for those, and they basically just wrote to his commanding officers trying to get them and tried to go that route, and they found somebody who was kind of willing to release them. And I think that just shows how pissed off people in the government were at Rick Doty at the time. And there's maybe other routes that we can go to actually get his service records.
Well, I think what would be great is if somebody could get to some of his COs, if somebody could get to some of his commanding officers, they would know what he was doing at specific times during his so-called military career. And remember, he was only in for 3 years before he went to the DIA. So, how many like battles could have been in for 3 years? Remember, the first 6 months is really just training before they actually make you do anything or send you someplace. So we've got 2.5 years. He's having battles in Afghanistan with General Mattis and being remote view trained to battle terrorists with superpowers all in 2.5 years. Like it doesn't make sense.
But even if his service records were to come out and not reflect those claims that he's made, I have no doubt that he would claim some type of conspiracy or some type of story as to why they're not reflected
Cover
there,
up. Yeah,
just
cover
like
up.
Bob Lazar. Well, they deleted my school records. That's why you can't find that I graduated from 2 colleges within 2 months. Like, yeah. People who can say anything they want without evidence can literally say anything they want without evidence. So even when you have evidence that what they're saying is not true, they can say whatever they want to say, no, it's true. And this is why it just doesn't look like it's true, you know?
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming and doing a sanity check on me.
I think it was a two-way street here, Steve.
It was cathartic for both of us.
Frustrating, man.
Yeah, and you just want to make sure, like, I'm looking at some of this stuff going, this is just too much. Maybe it's just too much at this point. We've been watching this guy since 2017, and it's just getting stupid. This is like, it's like a stupid, like, television show that you can't stop watching because you kind of want to see what happens next, even if the show's getting really stupid and they're running out of like plot lines and ideas for the show. Let's see how dumb the next episode is going to be. But I don't see a next episode for Elizondo. I think he blew his load and making all these claims. And if he doesn't prove any of this shit in his book, what's he going to do? Write another book full of fake stories?
Yes.
Or evidence-free?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what he says exactly.
Elizondo has endless episodes inside of him. He will be part of this topic for as long as he wishes to be. He can come back again and again, and there will be plenty of people here to eat up what he's saying. I have no doubt that Elizondo can continue to do this for many decades if he wishes to, despite whatever evidence comes out in contrary to anything that he says.
You're right.
Been doing it for 40 years.
There's never any consequences to these people.
Yeah.
They get caught lying. Like in any other field, if you get caught lying constantly, you're not welcome there anymore. Like, it's just, it's bizarre. Well, thank you very much for coming here. We both had a sanity check, so that's good. You don't be a stranger, or I may crack up before you come back again.
No, we gotta do this again, and maybe we'll talk about something else, maybe some history or something next time, because I know.
Yeah, I love the history of it.
Yeah, I'm not too much into talking about Lue Elizondo anymore, but I really appreciate you inviting me on. I love being here. I hardly ever miss your shows. I really enjoyed your interview with Estimate of the Situation the other day.
Yeah, it was fun.
Just, thanks for plugging along year after year, man. I appreciate everything you do.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve Long. You have a good night. All right, friends. And we're just going to do a quick wrap up here. There's some kind and generous people. Remember, we're a viewer-supported show. So hit that money button and throw some money our way. Rotary Motion gifted 1 Truth Seekers membership. And now is a very good time to tell you that you really need to hit that subscribe button. If you weren't aware, when somebody gifts a membership, it gets randomly given out to someone on our channel who is a subscriber, but not yet a YouTube channel member. And then you get the channel membership benefits for a month for free. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you'll know when we're doing live broadcasts like this, and you can come and be a part of our live chat. We'd love to have you. You are most welcome. We want to thank Amy WC, longtime show supporter, who says, glad she can contribute with a kind and generous $5 super chat. Let's give Rotary Motion a praise the cash. And we want to thank Amy WC, longtime show supporter. Thank you, Amy. All right, and then I got super excited. Well, I'm still excited, but not as excited as I was when I first saw this. Billy Corgan with 50,000 COP, which is Colombian pesos. So this is like $12. I saw 50,000 and I was like, did somebody send a $50,000 super chat? But it's we still appreciate your kindness, generosity, and support. We'll take the Colombian pesos. Works out. It's $12 right in the till of the show. Thank you. 1 of 3. Through FOIA, we know that Lou worked from 817 for OUSDI's Office of Military Commissions, handling security clearances as action officer and later as branch chief. His role focused on ensuring Gitmo defense attorneys. Yeah, if you want to, I'm going to have trouble if I go looking for your other two messages. In the future, please put them in all capital letters. Then I can scroll through and still find them. But yes, there are multiple parts of Lue Elizondo's history that are out there. So we appreciate you, Billy Corgan. I loved Smashing Pumpkins growing up. In fact, one of my first bands, we covered that. Is it Bullet with Butterfly Wings? No, whatever. The Rat in a Cage song. Despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. We covered that. And I remember, when you're in a rock band that nobody's ever heard of and you're doing original songs, like people are like, you do a couple covers, it helps you win the audience over. But thank you, Billy Corgan.
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
All right. Kyle Ferrier says, I have a $1 trillion Zimbabwean note. Yeah, isn't that interesting, right? Tarotino pesos. Yes. 500,000 pesos. Yes. Yes. And TJ says, I liked your work too, Billy. I don't believe that's the real Billy Corgan, unless Billy Corgan moved to Colombia. Who knows? You never know. I think Billy Corgan is into the paranormal, though. Operation Shutdown is here saying, thank you at Steve Long for another great appearance on Truth Seekers. Yeah. And Al Garay agreeing, Steve Long is a great guest. Yeah. Sometimes we have a guest and nobody really connects too much, but Steve Long is one of those guests that people will ask me. Occasionally, somebody will see one of his old interviews and say, why don't you have that guy on again? And we aim to please, so we bring him back. I'd have him here every day if I could, make my job easier, right? He could be like what did he call himself? The crusty skeptic? He could be my crusty skeptic co-host, right? We are Stephen from Canada. Good evening from the Smoke Detector Alliance. Oh boy, you guys are something else. Yes, I think David Wilcock will be on vacation for the next 3 weeks, which is fine with me. And for those who have asked, yes, we'll be returning soon to cover some of the wacky world of Wilcock. For those unaware, David Wilcock threatened to sue me, and I've had to consult with lawyers and do some other things just to make sure that we are safe and sound here. I believe that his threats are hollow threats, but still, out of an overabundance of caution, I decided to consult with some attorneys, have them look at my company and how we could protect ourselves from wackadoos filing lawsuits against us for no reason. All we ever did was show everybody that David Wilcock lies to his audience constantly. And for that, he's threatening to take legal action. Of course, he also said he was getting me arrested, and we know that that was all fake. He claimed that there was a criminal investigation into me. There wasn't, but this is no surprise because David Wilcock is lying because his lips are moving. So, of course, he would lie about me being under criminal investigation. Apparently, I was supposed to be under criminal investigation for mean tweets, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Operation Shutdown says, I love the wacky world of Wilcock. Well, I got to tell you that I was doing 2 or 3 hours of him every week. And I just decided I don't really want to do 2 or 3 hours of Wilcock every week, mostly due to the fact that every show he's just repeating the same. It's like an endless loop of bullshit, and he's just repeating the same crap over and over and over again. Hard to make a show out of that. Yes, I believe that this is absolutely true. Aliens or Susser says Wilcock's looking into artificial camel toe technology. You go, girl. Yes. We are here to merge with Beth's Cucumber Union. Oh, Ty Lee, Stephen hates it. No, well, yeah, love and hate relationship. Quite honestly, I never imagined when I first did the Wacky World of Wilcock that it would be such a popular thing. It was just kind of supposed to be like a one-off joke, like the Wacky World of Wilcock, and then everybody loved it so much that we did it more and more and more. And so, ML, are you the ML that was talking about being threatened by a certain Goon Squad no disclosure show host and their people? Are you that ML? Yes, Al Garay says the smoke detector 911 call was my favorite Wilcock moment on the show. For those unaware, David Wilcock, who claims he has a 180 IQ, which would make him smarter than Einstein, and who is the director of advanced technology at an aerospace company, his smoke detectors needed their batteries replaced. So he called the fire department and demanded that they come and help him. Oh, okay. You're right. Area 503. That was LM, not NL. Okay. Yeah. One of these people with these acronym names. So Wilcock demanded that the fire department come with ladders and help him change the batteries in his smoke detectors because they were driving him crazy. And when he falsely accused me of getting him swatted, I went and got all the public records from the police department local to him. And included in that was the 9/11 call. Yes, and Fessler burned someone bad, so they dropped some info about him last night that was juicy. Area 503, send me the links. I want the links or whatever was dropped. I want that. Juicier than what Spooky said? And for those unaware, we're talking about a certain dickless show host who is a propaganda mouthpiece, useful idiot to UFO scammers, who threatened, him and his co-host threatened me, my family, and doxed me because I hosted a filmmaker that was who made a film that was critical of Lue Elizondo. It's really kind of ridiculous that this is where we're at, but these people are sickening. And I wasn't going to share this, but I will. Apparently, the same show who doxed me, who doxed, I believe, threatened Area 503, threatened me, threatened several other people. There's another person related to that show, and they're threatening his wife. And I got to say, if you are a man and you are threatening someone's wife, you're a piece of shit.
You don't deserve to go through this shit. You contribute a lot to this community, and you're, obviously highly intelligent, a great researcher. And I'm just sorry that this is happening to you, man.
I appreciate that. I would have to say that I've called down at least half of it on myself by breaking allegiance and talking about things that were, supposed to be kind of like quote unquote in confidence. The fact that I've been labeled as lying about everything, mentally unstable, and that now I've gone to the point of saying, you need to be careful.
Okay, now
if you continue down this path, like your wife is fair game.
Your wife is fair game.
Okay, that actually doesn't scare me, and it sure as shit
The
doesn't.
Fister Squad told this guy that if he doesn't shut up, his wife is fair game. What a weasel you are, Fister.
Scare her. She has nothing to do with this. She doesn't participate in this.
And by the way, not for nothing, but this Fister Goon Squad show host is apparently threatening or allegedly threatening somebody's wife. This is the same guy who abandoned his wife and child so that he could move his gay lover into his home. Right? Nice guy. Really quality guy. Quality guy. Wow. Wow. And yes, then, ML, listen, you got to email me. I want to come and visit that place for sure. You're right. Now I recall who you are, and I apologize. But please forgive me, but realize that there's hundreds and hundreds of people with all these weird acronym names, and it's very hard to keep track of who's who. I get people mixed up. LM, ML. Yeah. Kyle says, breaking allegiance. These clowns care more about their social club than actually discovering the truth. Yeah, it's like a child's secret club or something, right? Amy WC, they do not threaten you, threaten family and all important. Well, in my case, they threatened my children and my wife. I mean, that's, and really, I will say this and put it on the record. If you have a problem with me, you could say anything you want about me. Anything you could, do whatever you're going to do to me, but don't involve my wife. Don't involve my children. That's a weasel move. And, if you want to bring down the wrath of God on you, threaten my wife or children, right? But I bear some of the responsibility, and I apologize to this person whose wife is being threatened now. This person, LM, one of the reasons his wife is being threatened right now is because I did not file criminal charges against these clowns, and I should have. Hindsight's always 20/20. I should have filed criminal harassment charges against them or something. You can't threaten people's wives and children. And they did. And I think if more of us have gone to the authorities when that last situation was happening, they wouldn't be able to keep doing it to more victims. So this is another victim of this toxic troll show host, propaganda garbage minister, which I love. He lets Richard Doty come on his show whenever he wants because Richard Doty gives him $100. Listen, if you're running a show where you're claiming to get to the truth about anything and you're taking $100 payments from a known admitted government disinformation agent, and then you're going to let him on your show to talk about anything he wants because you got $100, then you're a sellout loser clown. There, I said it. Yes, true cult behavior. Yes, more evidence of the type of people they are. Yeah. $100. Yeah, absolutely. Patty says true cult behavior. Roman X says, couldn't you still bring charges? Yeah, but I have to dig up all the evidence again. I still have it in a Google Drive folder. I don't know. I decided to let it go. I beefed up security around here. I'm a big Second Amendment guy. That's all I've got to say. It would be very foolish for anybody to come to my home and threaten me or my family. Stephen Cambion, my husband, was around it in the 60s. Oh, well, that's interesting. Church of Scientology, a.k.a. Galactic Federation of Lights. It's in my Twitter DM. Well, we'll see. Wow. It appears that Thomas Fessler is a wife beater and alcoholic, and this information tells how his wife left him because he was having affairs with men. Whoa, what a quality individual. You know what, Area 503, I'm going to save that for another day. I don't want to, I got to preview it. I'm afraid to just play it, right? I don't know if that's redacted for privacy information. Could have some sounds spicy to me though. And this is what I have been saying that guy, Thomas Fessler, is a piece of shit. Now you people know it. Why does he still have an audience? Do you like supporting a wife beater? And by the way, anybody who hits a woman is a piece of shit. Okay? Yeah, and I have actually known some wife beaters growing up on the mean streets of Philadelphia. And, they're always really, really damaged people. Anybody that will put their hands on a woman or try to control a woman through intimidation or especially physical violence is a damaged person, right? Mr. Ian, I will bring it once. I have to view it. I don't want to dox somebody by accident. There could be names, addresses on paperwork shown in this thing I've just been sent. So I'm going to have to preview it off air. Michael Padilla, Wilcock and Fessler should hook up. Absolutely. Those two are made for each other. But David Wilcock says he's not gay. Allegedly not gay. I know what I believe, but it's all insecurity. They lash out against people who can't defend themselves. Yeah, and I mean, see, I don't know. I've been with the same woman for like 25 years, and here's what I will tell you about my missus. I would never put my hands on her. but not just because it's wrong. I would never put my hands on her because I would wake up with like in the middle of my own castration if I put my hands on my wife. She's a tough lady. She doesn't take any shit. She would respond disproportionately aggressively if I ever were to put my hands on her. And besides that, I love my wife. I would never want to put my hands on her and hurt her. Now, we have gotten in some knock it down, drag out arguments for sure. I mean, we've been together 25 years. You're going to have some disagreements. Generally, we get along and we work it out, though. It's never reached a level of physical violence. The other thing is that my wife punches like a man. You know how, like, I will say that there have been a few times when I walked by her in the kitchen and she was bending over on getting dishes out of the sink or something, and I smacked her butt. And then she punched me one time on my arm so bad that she gave me this huge black and blue mark. And I'm like, man, I got to be careful with her. She punches. She's from Kensington in Philadelphia. Look it up. There's a saying about women from Kensington, where the men are men and so are the women. They fight like men in Kensington. If you weren't aware, the girls have fist fights, and usually it's over men. It's like you hit on my man, or that kind of thing, and they get in fist fights, like knockdown, drag out fist fights, bare knuckle boxing with women. It's a rough area, and that's where she's from, where it's very common to throw hands. So. Yeah, Ty Blee says, oh, that place is so sad now. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a story on that. Now, see, I'm not the only one whose girlfriend can beat them up. Mr. Ian says, my new girlfriend is 6'3" in heels. She'd floor me in one. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to get bobbing it. No, I would wake up with no balls or something. Troll. She's vicious, And besides, it's very healthy to be a little scared of your wife. I think so. Especially if she could beat you in a fist fight. She probably could. I don't know. She's little, but she's scrappy, right? All right. So listen, we've done our due diligence. I'm going to bounce on out of here. Well, we actually have done a show in under 2 hours for the first time in quite some time. I want to thank all of you kind and generous benefactors. I want to thank our guest tonight, Steve Long. I call these sanity checks. Like, I got to check in with somebody. I got to talk to somebody. Let me talk to Steve Long and make sure I'm not insane, right? It really is clown world here in the world of UFOs, but what can I say? I'm like a glutton for punishment. I just can't stop. So, yeah. So we thank all of you kind and generous benefactors. We thank our wonderful guest, Steve Long, and we thank all of you, our live audience. If you like the video that you just saw, please be sure to follow me on Twitter at Stephen Cambion, just my name. Visit our website for all the latest episodes, whether you want the audio version or the video version. They're all available at truthseekershow.com. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to smash that subscribe button. We're just about to hit another milestone. We'll be hitting 11,000 subscribers. It's only taken me, 5 years, because I'm doing it the honest way. I'm not hosting bullshitters every day to get to 30,000 subscribers in a year like some people. And I actually vet information and guests before we have them here. Next week, I've got a very interesting guest who's written a book about Jim Morrison and sort of Jim Morrison's occult and spiritual beliefs. It's a very interesting book. More details on that later. So what can I say, friends? That's all I got for you. Please do be sure to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. I appreciate the support. But that's all I got for you. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.